Hi everyone, my name is Robert Keogh. I'm back again here for another AI cybersecurity webinar, and I have the privilege today to be joined by Ronan Murphy, the Chief Strategy Officer with Forcepoint. But maybe Ronan, you could introduce yourself.
Hi, Robert. Delighted to be on with you today. My name is Ronan Murphy, Chief Data Strategy Officer in Forcepoint.
Fantastic. So I guess we'll get straight into it. We don't have much time, and I've had the privilege of seeing many of your presentations before, and always very insightful. So thanks again for taking time to talk to us today. So maybe just to open up, just a quick icebreaker. Of maybe you could give us an example of an interesting or novel or kind of like insightful AI use case that you've come across.
Yeah, great question. Well, let me think. I guess, look, in Forcepoint, I'm very fortunate. I get to spend time with a lot of the world's leading organizations, and many of our customers across many different industry verticals are looking at different AI initiatives. I guess today we're talking about retail. So we have a very large global customer base in the retail sector. And I guess one of the most interesting use cases we're seeing is how they're looking at running agentic AI systems, and specifically looking at kind of supplier history, margin trends, and I would even say global commodity pricing, and then figuring out ways that they can kind of autonomously negotiate discounts with suppliers based on market inputs. So I think it's incredible because if you think about it, you've got these systems that are pulling data from financial systems, supplier contracts, and sometimes even internal strategy decks. So data is really being used in creative, innovative ways that are delivering very tangible ROIs to the retail sector. So
Yeah, like it's definitely interesting. You mentioned about the benefits, but of course, like that benefit is also presents a risk, or in terms of like that attackers. I guess we've seen many attacks just this year in particular. I was reading just this morning from the Info Security magazine where they reported like a 58% increase in attacks from Q1 of this year to Q2. And of course, like we have let's say the headline attacks of the targeting Marks and Spencers, Harrods, Co-op, and so forth. That like all of these guys are after the data. They're not just trying to it's not a political ideological attack. Where they're trying to take the service offline. They're very much trying to target the data and exfiltrate the data. So this is, I guess, now at the very highest levels of company, at the very highest level of the company, like a topic for discussion of how do they protect their data, and maybe what are the like tools and technologies that the bad guys are currently using to attack companies. Like how are they leveraging AI? What is it that Forcepoint is seeing that the bad guys are using to extract this data?
yeah, it's a great question. Look, I guess the major trend we're seeing is how the threat actors are really effectively leveraging their phishing campaigns. It remains the preeminent vector for attack. So when you consider, irrespective of their jurisdiction, you can go to some of the GPTs out there and you can customize your outreach in the form of phishing to any industry vertical in any jurisdiction. And you can make it very realistic, very emotive, and design it and customize it in a way where your chances of getting the targeted entity to click on it are pretty high. So we're seeing the ability to customize that initial first phase of the attack is becoming far more proficient and effective by the bad guys leveraging AI. Obviously, once they compromise an individual or they compromise their credentials, then they would be quite astute and efficient at kind of escalating privileges, finding ways to laterally move across a network, and then obviously find repositories of data that represent value. Unfortunately, for the retail sector and for, I would say, many sectors, they tend to suffer right now from, let's say, a high degree of data sprawl, data fragmentation, and let's call it shadow data. And that's just simply a consequence of things like modernization as they, move data stores from on-prem to the cloud, as they invest in more kind of tooling across the network. And specifically in retail, you tend to see that they have a lot of customer PII data. They have a lot of payment data, kind of PCI, loyalty, digital receipts. They obviously have tend to have huge employee data, HR, payroll, and then they've got some of their, let's say, let's call it IP, which would be product inventory and logistic data. So they have a lot of very sensitive information around their environment. And obviously, when I think about data, I kind of look at it from the perspective of who has responsibility for data. And in an organization, the business is trying to, operationalize that data for AI and different initiatives. Regulators are looking at that data from a compliance perspective. Hackers are looking at that data because they want to get their paws on it for extortion.
Mm,
So, everyone is looking for that data piece, and obviously data is complicated, and it's high value. So, in Force Point, we spend a lot of our time working with some of the world's leading retailers across the globe, helping them to implement very effective programs that take them on that data security journey and figuring out how not do they just protect it from the likes of these ransomware actors that, as you said, Robert, are very prolific right now and are seeing a lot of success targeting, the likes of Harrods and Marks and Spencers and various different large retail entities. How do you reduce the impact from an attack like a threat actor like that? But also conversely, how do you actually use your data to become a business accelerator? How do you get that data
mm.
ready for operationalizing AI across a lot of the very exciting initiatives that the retail sector is looking to address?
Yeah, definitely. Very much what you say resonates here with what we see as well. Like that phishing is clearly the number one entry point. Again, we saw it just last week with the NSA report, the 2025 threat report that they did. 60% of all attacks are still coming through phishing campaigns, and of course, AI is particularly good at creating, as you said, emotive and kind of like very focused email attacks. It is interesting, I guess, as well to see that OpenAI had their report as well on kind of malicious use of AI, and they identified many of the problems that I guess would resonate with many retail companies as well. That while they are using AI, they're not yet using it in this kind of connected or like end-to-end agentic approach, where they kind of struggle the same way software companies do, where it's kind of it's a people problem. They don't have enough resources to be able to build all the systems and tools that they would like. But I guess, Sam Altman predicted that 2025 would be the year of agentic AI. I don't think it's really worked out that way, but I think maybe 2026 is much more. And maybe this is a question then of like, how do you see agentic AI like affecting the retail sector in 2026?
Look, I think I agree with your synopsis that, this 2025 really hasn't been the year, but I also do fundamentally believe that 2026 is going to be huge. And we're already seeing the hyperscalers, the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts, seeing huge adoption of their agentic AI capabilities within their platform. And I believe that the kind of ROI from operationalizing agentic AI is it's not to be sniffed at. My good friend Jeannie Remiti, the former CEO of IBM, makes a statement about AI where she said, we lose 10% of jobs, but 100% of jobs will change. And I do think that there's a lot of kind of laborious roles in, maybe call center type roles that agentic will be very successful at replacing. And obviously, those people then will upskill and go into more highly skilled, better paid roles. Um, but I think, I mean, the example I gave at the start, where retailers are now in a position to operationalize autonomous pricing and contract negotiation for their product using tooling like agentic is profoundly powerful. And I think you'll see that spread across the various different type of initiatives that organizations have, from their loyalty programs to efficiencies and customer support and so forth. And I mean, it is actively being worked on across the retail sector. Now, what I would say as well is that there is a realization, and I just, funnily enough, last week I had a long discussion with one of the world's largest retailers about this,
Mm.
around how do you get ready for agentic? How do you get ready for, going to Hugging Face and pulling down these large language models where you want to do R&D? How do you get ready for a native AI applications? How do you get ready for, making sure that your co-pilots are done properly? How do you get ready for AI as a vertical within your business? And the truth is that if your data isn't ready, Robert, for AI, then you're not ready for AI, because a lot of these tools are very, powerful off the shelf, but they would be vanilla, generic, right? You're not going to get the type of ROI that you'd expect. Where you really get value is when you can take these large quantities of data that you have across your organization and start feeding them into specific initiatives across all of the different flavors of AI. But that is not without its risks, typically, what we see is organizations tend to kind of, let's say, classify data using something like Microsoft Purview. It's a very generic classification, maybe internal, external, confidential. But what you're seeing now is that you're needing a much more granular classification across your data estate to ensure that you're doing this in a way that your data can be ingested in a safe and secure manner, in line with your policies, in line with governance. And then you really start to see these organizations accelerate the return on investment associated with these investments.
Yeah, I guess that definitely is the key, is having that plan of how you're going to move forward. And like really, companies, it was interesting, both Gartner and MIT have done recent surveys about AI and like the failures of AI programs. And it all comes down to like effectively lack of controls. And both of them basically recommend working with like partners who've solved this problem already. And I guess this is, in particular in ForcePoint's case, kind of like this is their playground. This is exactly where ForcePoint excel, and at like protecting the data. One kind of like interesting use case I wanted to touch on and kind of get your thoughts on is, as you mentioned, like AI is such a new technology, relatively speaking. Like companies, enterprises they're very used to, more mature technologies like antivirus, firewalls. But in many ways, AI is this brand new shiny thing, and nobody really knows what to do with it and what are the risks posed by it. So I'm wondering, kind of, with DLP, often it's very much okay, data entry and letting it's thinking about users exfiltrating data out of the company, extracting data. Is this something ForcePoint thinks about in terms of like AI and a bad guy, for example, tried to break the model, the attack, effectively attacking the model to try to exfiltrate data, and this outbound DLP protection?
Yeah, 100%. So there's different facets to operationalizing AI within a business. I think fundamentally our underlying philosophy and force point with our data security posture management is that if you want to accelerate these programs, you need to have a good understanding of the data from a foundational perspective. Have you discovered your data in terms of, shadow data, data sprawl, fragmented data? Have you accurately classified or contextualized that data? And remember, typically, and this tends to get lost a lot, organizations have typically a flat taxonomy: internal, external, confidential, highly confidential, right?
Mm.
But when it comes to AI, you may need, anywhere up to 15 or 20 different labeling taxonomy fields for documents, depending on what AI initiatives you want. Once you've kind of discovered it, classified it, and then prioritized which data you want to be used for AI, you then are in a very strong position. You have a good footing, a good foundation to do this right. And in Force Point, and we obviously with our partners like SmartTech 247, we do this very successfully for, again, some of the world's leading organizations across every vertical. But funnily enough, retail is one of the fastest growing areas for us after maybe finance. Um, Once you then get to, let's say you've done a good job in terms of that foundational piece, you're then at the situation where the model is up and running, but you want to make sure that the data that's continually going into that model or actually coming out of that model on the other side is within the policies or the guardrails that you have as a business. And we integrate with the likes of OpenAI, ChatGPTs, and a lot of the other AI initiatives to ensure that the how you define what you want to be used for training or what your ingress egress is what's called a system card. And that system card, if you Google ChatGPT system card, you'll see the guardrails that ChatGPT is publicly available, the guardrails that they use for how they define the risks associated with their AI models. We then help the organization to enforce the rules in their system card in terms of what type of data they want accessed and what type of both ingress and egress data can come from that. So we work, I would say the predominant areas we're seeing that requirement is where they're pulling down large language models from Hugging Face and they're using their research and development teams to feed those with data because they want to, innovate. We're seeing it across Agentic AI initiatives where they're looking at building out that capability. We're seeing it across co-pilot initiatives where they want to make sure that the correct data is being used for these productivity tools within the business. We're even seeing it at the application layer where they want to make sure that the data is properly classified and labeled for use by any of these new kind of native AI applications, or indeed applications that have been retrofitted with AI capabilities.
And we're almost out of time, but maybe just like one question to close on. Would kind of really like to get your insight of like kind of the kind of like next steps of how a company could move forward. That I guess what I see a lot is of this FOMO, also fear of missing out, on boards are asking these questions. Oh, we need AI. We need AI to both improve our operational excellence and kind of like our efficiencies, but we also need it in our product to be even as table stakes, to be able to say that our product is good enough as is, or like is as good as the competitors. What are like the key things, rather than kind of rushing to take this shiny new technology in and potentially introduce a lot of problems? What are what's your key advice, your 1, 2 things that you would say to a CISO now in a retail company of what could they do in the next 90 days to improve their posture, their security posture?
Okay. Well, what I would say first and foremost is I feel like you may have heard of the Klondike Gold Rush in the Yukon Territory in Canada in the
A little
1890s,
before
right?
my time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I firmly believe that when it comes to AI, the winners are being decided right now. So I would say in retail, AI is in a land and grab phase, similar to say let's say e-commerce in the early noughties. So I think retailers who operationalize AI early, they create their kind of technology and data moats using their data for intelligence, demand forecasting, pricing models. They will continuously learn and they'll get better and they'll pull ahead. So I think every month that a retailer delays operationalizing of this technology, I think their competitors will either make up ground or pass them out because AI is very, very powerful. But to your question, I think how you get to a position on having good AI is you must remember that AI is only as good as the data that it's built on. And um, I guess the paradox is if AI is the gold rush, then data is the gold. And then I guess you have companies like ForcePoint with our DSPM capabilities and SmartTech, we're the kind of picks and shovels, right? It was one thing to go to the Yukon Valley and try and find gold, but if there wasn't picks and shovels there, you weren't finding any gold, right? So AI models that are built on ungoverned or poor data quality, they'll have governance compliance risks. They'll have a lot of hallucination. They'll generally be more problematic than the investment you've put in. So my advice is you use data security posture management to discover and classify the sensitive data across your organization, ensure that it's properly labeled, and then enforce the governance before AI systems consume that data, and then reduce risk. Because remember, you cannot strike gold with AI if you have dirty data. So understanding that data has never ever been more important. And to wrap up, I would say that now is the opportunity to capitalize on this AI revolution. And I don't believe that organizations who want to really lead in their field have the luxury of sitting back and waiting to actually see what happens.
Yeah, to paraphrase another question, like what I heard, a good saying of the future, that there will be two types of companies: AI powered companies and dead companies.
Yeah.
So definitely, definitely, I think exactly what you say, that like operationalizing it is incredibly important. And if you don't have that plan, if you're not working with an experienced partner to help you deliver on the promise of AI, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
And
Um,
look, from our perspective, Rob, to wrap up, I mean, we have built the world's leading capability to understand data, discover data, classify data, protect data, and obviously, partners like SmartTech have that capability where they understand how you take these very powerful technologies and how you get them working in line with the objectives that you have as a business, which again is an important part of this puzzle.
Absolutely. Thanks again. I guess we are now out of time. It's been fantastic as always and insightful as always to talk to you again, Ronan. Thanks very much for taking the time today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.